Today we're diving into a part of the world that is just full of contradictions. It's a gateway to Southeast Asia, a forgotten but absolutely crucial front line of World War II, and right now it's a place where two powerful and competing visions for the future are colliding head-on. This is the story of Northeast India.
So let's start with this name, Stalingrad of the East. Now that's a heck of a moniker, right? It wasn't just some catchy label, it was earned in a brutal, desperate battle fought in the hills of Nagaland. And it's a battle that, for many of us, has been completely lost to history. But just like its namesake, it was a turning point that changed the entire course of the war.
I mean, really think about that. What if one of the most important battles of the Second World War is one you can't even name? Because the answer to that question takes us to this remote corner of India where an incredible story of sacrifice, rebellion, and, well, unintended consequences played out.
All right, let's set the stage. The year is 1944. The Imperial Japanese Army, in what was really a last-ditch effort to turn the tide, launches this incredibly audacious invasion of British India. The code name was Operation Yugo, and their primary target? A small strategic hill town called Kohima.
Okay, pause for a second and just let that sink in. In 2013, the British public voted this battle as their nation's greatest. Not just in World War II, but in their entire history. Ahead of Waterloo, ahead of D-Day. That tells you this was no minor skirmish. This was a ferocious, world-altering event that has somehow remained a footnote in our popular memory. So here's the really crucial part. Japan, fighting alongside Subhash Chandra Bose's Indian National Army, wasn't just trying to gain territory. Their goal was way bigger. They hoped to spark a massive, countrywide uprising that would completely shatter the British Empire in India. The fighting was unbelievably intense. It famously took place across a district commissioner's tennis court. I mean, the two sides were close enough to lob grenades at each other by hand. And as you can see, the cost in human lives was just immense. And this is where the story gets really interesting. It's the central paradox of this whole thing. On the battlefield, the INA and the Japanese were defeated. It was a clear military loss. But what happened after the battle is what truly changed India forever. The war was over, sure, but the fight for independence was about to explode. You see, after the war, the British made a huge miscalculation. They decided to put 3 INA officers on public trial for treason at the Red Fort. But instead of the public condemning them, they were hailed as patriots, as heroes, and that lit a fire across the country. Suddenly, the very forces the British had relied on for centuries, the Air Force, the Navy, and most critically, the Army, began to mutiny. The loyalty that held the empire together was just crumbling away. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This is from Clement Attlee, the British Prime Minister who actually oversaw India's independence. He later admitted that the main reason Britain left in such a hurry was because of the INA. The fear that the Indian Army was no longer loyal, no longer trustworthy, meant their role was basically over. A military defeat had turned into a massive political victory. So let's fast forward from that history to the present day, because that legacy of conflict is playing out in a really fascinating modern paradox. Today, Northeast India is defined by two completely opposing ideas. It's seen as both a gateway for commerce and a garrison for security. So, on the one hand, you've got the government's Act East policy. This is this grand vision to turn the whole region into a bustling economic corridor, connecting India to the rest of Asia. But on the other hand, you have the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, or AFSPA. And that's a law that has created a heavily militarized security state for decades. Let's break down each of these. The Gateway vision is seriously ambitious. We're talking about massive infrastructure projects. There's a trilateral highway that will stretch all the way to Thailand, new waterways, new rail links to Bangladesh, huge logistics parks. The whole idea is to finally bridge the connectivity gap and unlock what everyone knows is the region's massive economic potential. But then you have the garrison reality. AFSPA has been in place since 1958, and it gives the military these sweeping powers in any area the government declares disturbed. This includes the power to shoot to kill on suspicion, to arrest and search without warrants, and maybe most contentiously, it gives soldiers near total legal immunity from prosecution, unless the central government itself gives permission.
So, what does that actually mean for the people who live there? Well, for decades, this law has profoundly shaped everyday life. It's created an environment where security concerns often completely overshadow basic civil liberties. For years and years, human rights organizations and even official judicial inquiries have documented a recurring pattern of really serious allegations in areas under AFSPA. We're talking about claims of fake encounters, of enforced disappearances, and this pervasive culture of impunity that makes getting justice incredibly difficult for victims and their families. This number, it represents one of the most powerful symbols of protest against the act. For 16 years, a single activist from Manipur named Iram Sharmila maintained a hunger strike. Her only demand? The repeal of AFSPA. It became this powerful moral indictment of the law that drew attention from all over the world. And the resistance on the ground has been tireless. Local women-led movements like the Made Up Haibi, which translates to Woman Torchbearers, have been right at the front in Manipur. They organize these huge public demonstrations, they document abuses, and they provide this critical support system for their communities, constantly challenging the status quo from the ground up. And look, this criticism isn't just coming from activists. Back in 2005, a committee appointed by the Indian government itself reviewed the act. Their conclusion? They said AFSPA had become a symbol of oppression, and they recommended that it be repealed. That really highlights the deep, long-running debate over this law's place in a democracy. Which brings us right back to the central question for the region's future. You have this massive push for development and connectivity happening at the exact same time as this decades-long security-first approach. So the question is, can the first one, the development, heal the wounds of the second? I mean, the scale of the investment is just undeniable. We're talking huge sums of money. 1.6 lakh crores. That's nearly $20 billion for highway projects alone. You add in new energy pipelines and waterways, and the government's strategy becomes pretty clear. They're betting on economic development as the main path to peace and prosperity. So, as these new physical bridges and highways connect the region to the rest of Asia, the real challenge remains. Can India build that more difficult, more important kind of bridge? The one that connects the promise of economic development with the principles of security and the absolute protection of human rights. That is the defining question for the future of Northeast India.